Hey everyone, today I am up here at Spartan Training Concepts with Josh Long, the owner. And I am here because we've been doing a little bit of private training. And as you may be able to tell, we are closer than 6 feet from each other. That's a risk both of us are willing to take. However, because of what's been going on, a lot of the larger scale classes are canceled or people just don't feel comfortable meeting in larger groups. So they would prefer a more intimate experience, and hence why I'm here with Josh. So we're doing a little bit of work down in the shoot house using night vision and in total darkness, and kind of him giving me some tips and tricks there. And now we're about to start rolling here on the mats since he is a jiu-jitsu black belt. So since we're mentioning your black belt status, what is your experience in both, I guess, the world of firearms and medical training, as well as, well, we'll start with that and then we'll talk about your hand-to-hand combat experience.
Firearms and medical training, it's all in the private sector as far as medical training. I'm not an EMT, but I've trained several places that specifically focus on traumatic injury. Has really been my main focus, and not just with the two-legged humans,
Sure.
but also with canines. As you know, I'm very close to all canines. I mean, I really love them. So I'm not a canine handler, but I do work with guys that are handlers, and so it's not only necessary for myself and my personal life, but for that as well. So firearms training, tactical training, I guess that's a pretty broad word, but as you know, once again with that, I've spent most of my adult life traveling around the country, seeking out the highest level of training I could find in all aspects. I get bored fairly easily with doing the same thing over and over.
Right.
And each time I do something, it opens up a whole nother window and gives me a look at, another facet that I'm missing. If it's CQB stuff or if it's night vision that we were just working on, maybe, I've just gotten comfortable with CQB stuff and white light and things like that. Well, now what about adding in night vision?
Sure.
There's just always another level, and I just have this hunger to always seek out the highest level training and experience I can get in that next level, no matter what it is. It's so easy, I know, for myself and for others to get comfortable in just one realm of the training. But you've been out with us even with the classes in like the man tracking stuff, or the small unit tactics stuff. It's just so much more to be well-rounded,
Right.
And not get single focused in one area. So,
Well, and I would say, speaking from my perspective as a student of multiple classes here, that feeling is contagious to where, people get complacent. And I think if I can speak for myself, a lot of this is because we don't know what we don't know. We don't even realize that there's a whole nother tier of training and skills and capabilities. So, with the night vision, I always thought, well, I have a white light on my rifle, that's all I need. Or I have a white light on my pistol, that's all I need. If I can't get it done with that, like, there is really another step. And now that I'm fairly gently dipping my toe into the world of night vision, I'm realizing that there's a whole nother world that I didn't even know was there.
Sure.
And how my lack of knowledge in that spectrum is now showing itself very rapidly. Hence why I'm seeking out, training here. So you've trained all over the country with some of the best people out there. You even host a lot of people over here as well.
I do.
But as far as like combatives and hand-to-hand and jiu-jitsu, what is your background in martial arts?
Oh, well, as far as that goes, since I'm from the older generation, unfortunately, I started out when I was very young in traditional martial arts, like most people did, at my age. I was a wrestler, junior high school stuff, and I really enjoyed that. Grappling was really felt home for me, I was comfortable. But at that time, that wasn't thought of as a form of fighting back then. In that era when I grew up, it was basically, back then it seemed like you were fighting. You were a tough guy if you played football, or if you did traditional martial arts. Then you knew how to fight. For some reason, even though wrestlers back then, were the most hardcore guys. I mean, really, those wrestling rooms, practices and stuff. There's nothing like them. Those are some of the best times of my life. The mental toughness that it creates. Not just physically. But anyway, so at that time, I didn't enjoy football. I played it a little bit, but I loved wrestling. But I also liked fighting,
Sure.
So traditional martial arts, taekwondo and stuff when I was younger. And then in my teenage years and in my early 20s and stuff, I got really deep into kung fu. Yeah, unfortunately.
All right. Yeah.
And I really thought that was I thought that was kind of a next level past the taekwondo. I kind of got bored on kind of that stuff. There was a lot of Filipino stick fighting and knife fighting and other stuff that I got into along with that as well, and that stuff was pretty good. But the kung fu, the traditional martial arts, it kind of led me down a path that wasn't good. I didn't know any different at the time, but then shortly after I'd been involved in that for a few years, the UFC came out, and it changed everything. Back then, here in Oregon anyway, when you reached a certain level, like in those arts, like the kung fu stuff, you'd have to carry a card with you that you were a dangerous weapon.
Right.
I remember carrying that, like, oh, okay, now I guess I'm officially a dangerous weapon.
Right.
And not till later did I realize how far from the truth that was, and how actually taking that path and leaving the path of my wrestling base was the wrong choice. It was so detrimental to actual true self-defense. If I would have spent that time more on just pure wrestling rather than the traditional martial arts that I was doing, I would have been so much farther ahead as far as true self-defense and hand-to-hand combative type stuff, but didn't realize it at the time.
So to qualify that, was there an experience that you had where you thought you were going to be able to physically dominate someone and then the opposite happened?
Oh, wow. Yes. Now,
I may have already known this story, and I love this story, but I think it's an excellent example of
this. Yes, there was. And this haunted me for so long in my life. It was literally one of the most impactful and devastating times in my life, and it haunted me for so long. And I was able to turn that around and use it for the motivation. I mean, and that's really what needs to be done in those type of situations. And so now I'm thankful for it, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. But back then, I got into an altercation as a young kid. I was probably early 20s, and like I said, I was a dangerous weapon. I had a card. It said I was, right?
Yeah.
So I had to have been. But it was just a scuffle with another guy around my age. But he basically just charged me and tackled me. I ended up on my back before I even knew what happened. I threw a technique. I don't remember exactly what it was at the time. And all I could remember, I felt nothing, but I was on my back and he was on top of me throwing punches. And it was just like, it was all so surreal. Like, I didn't know how this could have possibly even happened. It was so beyond my imagination that could have happened.
Right. Because he's not even supposed to be able to get that close to you.
No.
In your world.
Of course not.
It's just you do a couple moves and he's on the ground.
My real focus was I didn't want to hurt this person. That was truly my mental thought was I don't want to hurt this guy. Well, before I know it, within a split second, just from my wrestling base, not even knowing what I was, physically trying to do this, but I was back on my feet. It just happened, naturally, because he couldn't hold me down with my wrestling skills. Well, at that point, I just tell myself, okay, I can't worry about not hurting this guy again. If he charges me again, this is, no holds barred here. Going to have to do the heart punch or something. I guess it's going to be might even have to pull that out. So same thing happens again, and I'm in the exact same position
on the ground.
Pop back to my feet, and then it kind of gets broke up. We're split apart and stuff. But I was so devastated. There was no you didn't feel anything or nothing like. There's none of that. Not like physical pain or you're scared or any of that. I was just in such a weird place in my mind of like, I could not believe that this had happened.
Right.
How could this have happened with someone who isn't trained? All they did is charge me like a football player, knock me down. I still have my card.
Right. I'm still a dangerous weapon, and yet
what happened?
How did an untrained guy put me on the ground?
And I know I was at for what I was doing, I was at a fairly high level. I mean, in what I was training in, you know, I mean, I was doing well at what I was doing. So after that, I was really lost. I was so lost mentally, just going through life for, you know, it's a short amount of time, not a lot. I'm not talking years, but a short amount of time, like trying to figure out how things could have went so wrong. You know, what did I do that was so wrong? And when I reevaluated the situation, I thought, well, everything that I learned that I tried with the traditional martial arts stuff that I tried, it completely failed me. Maybe I could have, if I was better at it, it wouldn't have, but I don't see it that way. The way I experienced it was what worked for me was my wrestling. Like I popped back up in split second.
Right.
And if I would have stuck with my wrestling, there was no way I would have been on the ground in the first place.
Right.
So that was my thought process of, well, you know, so now what do I do? But wrestling's not a style of fighting, right?
Right.
Well, luckily after that, the UFC comes out. And when I saw that, I was just fascinated, you know, like so many people were. And at that point, there's a major intersection in life where so many people struggled on which way to go. Do you stick with the traditional martial arts and not want to part from that and not want to accept what the change is and what you may need to do if you're really looking at true self-defense? Or do you take that leap of faith? You know, it's always scary to take that step.
Right.
But for me, that's the path I went. And luckily at that time, shortly after, someone who's very famous in the industry opened up his gym here in the Portland area. His name's Matt Thornton, and he opened up, it's called Straight Blast Gym. Most everybody that watches UFC have now heard of Straight Blast Gym. It's where Conor McGregor trains, and the Straight Blast Gym in Ireland and everything. So, I took that step and walked into that gym and threw my ego to the aside. It's very difficult to do something like that, but I'm glad I did.
So, and if I can kind of try to articulate that in a slightly different way, that crossroads that you got to, you know, it seems like to me before the UFC, everything was all theory. It was like, well, if a kung fu guy faced a taekwondo guy, this is what would happen. But there was never really a place where that got to play out, at least not on a stage where everyone could see it happening. And if you've never seen like UFC 1, 2, and 3, it was way different from what UFC is now. It was people of pure art styles going against each other. Boxer against sumo wrestler. Kung fu versus ninjas and all. Like there was a legitimate ninja. In UFC 1. And a boxer with only one boxing glove, which is an interesting story.
That's a classic.
And Royce Gracie doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu dominated. And like it wasn't even close. And it's interesting looking at it now, seeing some of the stuff he was doing is so obvious what he was setting up. But back then, this was the first time anyone had seen it. Anyway, so a lot of people who'd been training in these art styles their whole life, you've been paying money into it. You've been dedicating years of your life into this art form that you believe is going to get you through, only for everything in the world telling you the opposite. And now you have to make this decision. Do I just continue doing what I've been doing because to not do it would be to admit that I've been wrong? Or do I accept what's happening and step foot into a different gym, which is what you did? And so you've been now training jiu-jitsu for how long?
Well, since the late 90s at some point, and it's, for me, since I do so many other things, my path's been a lot different than a lot of jiu-jitsu guys who, mainly focus on just jiu-jitsu and never leave, that course. But for me, with all the other stuff that I do, there's been a lot of times where I've taken off a year or 2 years at a time and back, and I'm in and out a lot. It's, if I would have just stayed focused only on jiu-jitsu, I'd obviously be a lot better than I am now. A lot more technical, a lot better than I am now. But there's only X amount of hours in a day, only X amount of days in your life, right? And for me, like I've said, I have such a hunger to learn so many things. I want to be as well-rounded as I can possibly be. That's always my goal.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video specifically is I feel like, I've been taking firearms training for many, many years now. And one of the things that I see people lacking on the most, and myself included, I am not exempt from this, is the hand-to-hand stuff. A lot of gun guys even will throw the phrase, well, if they get close enough to punch me, I'll have already shot them anyway. And that's just not the way the real world works. And one of the first classes I took with Spartan was your MCAP. Is MCAP?
Oh, yeah.
MCAT classes, which is like basically the Army's combatives course. And it was a 2-day course of all hand-to-hand stuff, going over different like chokes and all that kind of stuff, disarms. The main thing I learned in that 2-day class was I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to hand-to-hand. Like, I realized, again, there's this whole world that I didn't know existed, that I don't know how much I suck at it until I was in that situation.
Sure.
And especially when you were demonstrating the moves, seeing how fluidly you were able to move around. And every time, like, again, obviously when we're demoing, we're going nice and gentle. You could feel the difference between you doing it and an untrained person doing it. And I realized, okay, he knows something that I don't know, and I want to know it because clearly he's more skilled at this than I am. And granted, I don't live super close here, so I was doing some basically jiu-jitsu training down where I'm at. And it's definitely more sport-oriented. There was still a lot of really good stuff there, but I didn't really get a full experience of how valuable jiu-jitsu was and how helpless you are without jiu-jitsu until literally my very first day. The person they have me training with was literally half my weight. I think actually technically less than half my weight, because I was around 230 and the guy they paired me up with was like 165. Several inches shorter than me. And granted, we're just going through the motions. We're not actually live sparring yet. But it became immediately clear to me that this guy, literally half my weight, could do whatever he wanted to me, and I had no control over it. And I'd heard that before with jiu-jitsu, that, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, it's like you're drowning and you don't know how to swim and you don't know how to get out of the situation. Experiencing it was a whole nother thing, and feeling it for myself of how helpless I was without that skill set is what, you know, drove me to want to continue to get better at it. And again, time is always an issue. Hence why private training is something where you can hopefully get that sorted out and get a lot more one-on-one experience and time. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and gear up. We're going to start rolling, and we'll probably talk a little bit more after we're all nice and sweaty, and kind of wrap up what kind of opportunities we have here. But just really quickly, before people see that footage, if people want to know more about where they can find and schedule private training with you, where's a good resource for that?
SpartanTrainingConcepts.com, and just shoot me an email, josh@SpartanTrainingConcepts.com. And all of our classes are listed on there, of course. We're really focusing on a lot of trying to do more small group and private individual type classes. So we can certainly do the large group as well. It's been difficult here lately. I have so much stuff going on personally to put a lot of classes on the books, open public classes. But private classes, hit me up. We can set them up. And if you don't see what you're looking for on our website, like a specific class, but you want a combination of some of the other classes together, that's totally fine too. We can, you know, set you up a completely custom private class as well.
Cool.
So,
yeah, so I'll have the links below to that, but let's go ahead and gear up.
All right. When you step in that octagon like that, you lock the door and you just like, just getting reeling down there. And that feeling is just so, once you've had it, it's hard to let it go.
Well, it's like, granted, I know it's not the same, but doing training on a square range, shooting at stationary targets when you're stationary, the level of confidence you get doing that, and then right when you know a force-on-force drill is about to start, you're like, okay, someone's going to be shooting at me. I'm probably going to not use my sights and not move, and I'm going to get lit up, and that's not going to be fun. I know it's definitely not the same, but it's probably similar, just because it's all this theory is now about to be put to practice.
Right.
And I know it's probably not going to go well for me. Granted, the first time I did it, I thought it was going to go very well for me. And then I didn't hit the bad guy. I'm like, oh, this gun sucks. The sights are off. It's not doing, like, oh, I'm not even using my sights. And I tell people that at the store a lot. And
That wouldn't happen to them.
they always look at me when I say that like, okay.
You
like,
need more training.
Yeah, and it's like, you don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know. All right, you ready?
Yeah, what do you want to do?
All right, so we just wrapped up doing some, we went over some drills. I guess, first of all, the place that I was training in jiu-jitsu before was a no-gi gym, and I think that there's a lot of merit to that. However, like I said, it's a predominantly sport-oriented style of jiu-jitsu, and sport jiu-jitsu in rash guards and, you know, really tight clothing, while there's a lot to be gained from that, isn't very indicative of the type of grappling you're going to be experiencing in the real world. So we were doing some gi stuff, and so Josh was going over some of the differences there, some of the advantages and disadvantages of the gi, and then we did some light rolling. And I think this is one of the benefits of having private lessons, specifically in something like jiu-jitsu, is even from my experience, and I know a lot of people's experiences out there, when you're a white belt and you're going against other white belts, the injuries are relatively low, I would say, in jiu-jitsu gyms, but you're more likely to get injured, it seems like, as a white belt going against another white belt than a white belt going against a purple belt,
Certainly.
brown belt, black belt.
Yep.
Because the black belt is in full control of the situation and will make sure that they stop short of actually inflicting any injuries or damage on you. So it's as safe, I think, as some rolling can get. And again, being able to do that with someone who knows what they're doing in a very safe context where you're not having to worry about getting yourself injured is a very valuable thing. And I think now is as good a time as any to bring up a question that one of my patrons left when they knew I was going to be doing some filming with you. And that's, you know, what would you recommend for someone who is like just getting into martial arts or out of shape or anything like that? From my uninformed perspective, just getting on the mat and doing it is kind of the most important thing. There's not like a workout you have to do before the workout. Like, you just need to start doing it. And again, especially doing it with someone who can do it safely to where both people are as safe as possible is a good thing. What's your perspective on that?
Man, I couldn't agree more with you. I've seen this so many times through the years, and it's the person that just keeps putting it off, saying, I need to do this first before I can get in there, that never gets in there.
Right.
You know, it's not just in the gym like BJJ and stuff, but in the firearms world, in the community, it's the same thing. You know, I need to practice more. I need to get to this level before I can go take that class.
Right.
No, you gotta jump in there and do it. You know, I've seen so many amazing transitions from people, especially people that are, out of shape or overweight. They come into the gym, and a lot of times they may even have low self-esteem issues and things like that. But after a short amount of time, you know, you can just see their ego just building, or their confidence, confidence boosting and boosting, losing weight, getting in shape. Just everything is coming together for them. And years down the road, they're completely different people than when they stepped in there.
Yeah.
But if you never take that step and you keep looking for a reason not to, you'll never do it.
Yeah. And there's plenty of reasons not to that I can come up with. I'm really good at coming up with reasons to not do something.
There's a lot of reasons. And, you know, like you've heard me talk about in other classes, it's difficult. I understand it's difficult to step outside of that comfort zone. For me, anytime I'm traveling, going to another class or whatever, it's because, number one, I haven't done that in so long, I need to freshen up. Or two, it's something completely new to me, which is generally the case. And it's very uncomfortable for me to go there, and suck it up and look like the idiot in the class and do it. But if I didn't, I wouldn't have any of this experience, right? So,
yeah, I think everyone's afraid of being the guy who is the slowest in the class or being the worst shot or whatever the type of class it is. They're afraid of being the guy who's the worst. But it's like that saying, the first step at sucking is the first step at getting really good at something.
Sure.
Like, you're not born a great shot. Jerry Michalik didn't just start shooting sub-second, 5-round shot, like 5-shot groups. There was a period of time where he was probably shooting low left.
No,
his sights were off.
I tell myself he was born that way.
Yeah. And, to get to where you are as a black belt in jiu-jitsu, or your competency with different firearms training or medical training, or even the little level of expertise that I have in certain things, you don't get there. Watch my first YouTube video versus some of the YouTube videos I'm making now. The difference is night and day.
Sure.
You have to start, and you're going to suck at first.
Yep.
But that's how you get better, and I still have a long way to go, as you might be able to see from the footage of me rolling here. I have a very, very long way to go, but again, through the aid of things like both private classes and just general classes with very knowledgeable people who can do it in a safe manner, in a manner where I feel comfortable learning, again, whether it be in a group setting or one-on-one, I think that's a very valuable thing, and especially for people in like the Portland metropolitan area, or even me as far down as, Eugene. We have resources here. You just have to search them out, and again, find places like Spartan Training Concepts and other places all across the country where you can be the well-rounded warrior that I know you're setting yourself out to be. Anything else you want to add?
I would just really, be clear with yourself on what your goal is. If you're looking to do some, hand-to-hand combatives, for example, BJJ or whatever it is, look at what you're getting out of it. Are you really going into it just to get in shape? Are you doing it for possibly competing sport-wise? Or is your long-term goal or your immediate goal really self-defense? Because those are all different things, you know. As we were kind of rolling there, I kind of talked a little bit about that, but old school BJJ was really just for the street, right? And I'm not saying, as BJJ has evolved into this sporting style that it is now, isn't effective on the streets. Certainly, it definitely is. But there's a lot missing there. Once you start adding in, punches and elbows and all that kind of stuff, you start adding all that in. A lot of that's got lost along the way. So I would really try to find, figure out exactly what you're looking for and find the gym that does that. Like for me here, we've been just talking BJJ today and stuff, but as I'm an Army Combatives instructor. So I've done the Combatives program. I've had multiple MMA fights. I've been in the cage. It's not, it's not new to me. So there are other things. I'm not just focusing on sport jiu-jitsu here, even though that's what we're talking about today. So
my goal is to make sure if I'm ever faced with Ken the Butcher, that I'll know what to do.
Oh.
But anyway, with that being said, again, I'll have the links down below. That's a little inside joke for us here. I'll have the links below to Spartan Training Concepts and his email address. If you're looking for private training, whether it be combatives, whether it be night vision, whether it just be basic firearm safety and handling and all that kind of stuff, we have resources, so take advantage of them. But anyway, with all that being said, Josh, really appreciate your time.
Appreciate coming out.
But as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.
Come on, I know you know how to get out of here. You already did it.
Yeah, that was about a bajillion minutes ago when I had explosive energy.
Look, you already got it back.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you.
They must be really polite over there, man.
It's mostly just that I'm not delusional enough to think that I'm actually escaping anything. Oh, like there was a time, every once in a while, Mike would very gently roll with people, and I could tell, at least my perception of it was, he's trying to gauge where you're at and like whether you've taken into account some of the things that we've gone over in the classes. And like that day we'd been doing knee slicing, and so he put me in a position to knee slice him, and he didn't like give it to me, like he made me work a little bit for it, but I could tell when I got it that it was very graciously given on his part. But I also understand there's probably people like, oh, I'm getting this. All right, I can do it on the black belt.
Dude, that happens a lot.
And so I wanted to make sure Mike knew I wasn't one of those people. So I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
And he just started laughing.